to episode 12 of Winning the Moment with Ryan Luelf. Today is a really fun episode. I actually didn't meet Ryan until we started recording, and he has an amazing story. He actually beat stage 4 cancer twice. Him and his family lived in an RV for a couple of years and traveled to all 50 states. And now he's able to spend all of his free time with his family playing pickleball through his passive income. You're going to want to hear all about how he did that. Stay tuned till the end because we have some really, really riveting conversations. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Okay, let's rock and roll. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Winning the Moment. Today's a fun episode because I've got a guest that I just met. So we get to actually meet Ryan together. Will you pronounce your last name for me?
Luelf, like self.
Luelf. Ryan Luelf. All right, perfect. I nailed it. That's always an intimidating thing to get the last name right. So really exciting. Ryan was referred to me by our team here at Blue Forum. He'd been going on in a bunch of podcasts, and Mallory and Blake thought, like, man, this guy would be awesome. We got to get him on Winning the Moment. So I'm so excited to have him here. He actually lives in, is it Oklahoma?
Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yes, sir.
So to have him in studio is quite the treat. But Ryan, I'll kind of turn it over to you. I think a great way to start is just some of your backstory and kind of how we got here today.
Yeah, so I'm 43 years old. Been married to my high school sweetheart, Caroline, for a little over 23 years. We've been together since 1996.
Wow.
Yeah, I snagged her when she was only 14. If you saw how beautiful she is, though, you'd realize I was a very smart man. I took her off the market early.
Nice.
And we have 4 kids. Our oldest son, Addison, 17. Our daughter, Atlanta, is 13. Son, Arthur, 11. And then our surprise son, Arrow, is 19 months.
Oh, wow. Wait, so your oldest was how old again?
17, almost 18.
Oh, my gosh.
He just graduated high school.
So you started all the way back at the beginning.
Yeah, and my wife, actually, it was interesting. She had what she called the pregnancy scare. She thought she was pregnant and about had a heart attack, and it was a false alarm. And then 2 months later, she actually got pregnant.
So at that time, did you guys just think that she was at a stage in her life she wouldn't get pregnant anymore, or were you having any preventative measures? Or?
Yeah, I mean, we had been taking preventative measures for many years. We had no intention of having any more children. And what actually happened was because of how challenging, and we can get into this later if you'd like, but I went through cancer for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And for how challenging it is to be a supporter of someone going through that.
Yeah.
Her hormones got kind of way out of whack. So she had been seeing a naturopath, basic doctor there in Oklahoma, who was just kind of helping her, recover because of just the stress we had been under and just things that you don't realize kind of occur to you when you're doing everything within your power to help your life partner live, overcome, not
and you
die.
guys had kids, obviously,
Oh,
right?
yeah,
So
our 3 oldest ones were under 10 at the time.
So then you're managing the household basically by yourself.
So interesting enough, it's kind of a joke now. I always tell our naturopath doctor, it's a lady, I always say, we're going to send you the bill because she honestly said, I kind of forgot to tell you, like, hey, when we get your hormones all back in order, being that you're around 40, you can tend to ovulate like way outside your cycle. And she didn't really explain or mention that.
Interesting.
So my wife was like 10 days outside of the normal window. And so we'd operated under that, and I had actually considered getting a vasectomy, and then I changed my mind. I think it was just like, I don't really want anybody touching me or needles or anything. I went through so much during my cancer journey.
Yeah,
and
that
so
makes sense.
I had the consultation, and then I had the appointment scheduled, and then I canceled it. And that was like 1.5 years before we found out she was pregnant.
That's funny because I have a daughter who's 9 and my son is 7. And as soon as my son was born and healthy, I was like, sign me up. Like, let's get it snipped. I'm ready. Like I 2 is good for me. I don't want to be outnumbered.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
And so, that's part of just this crazy life adventure we've been on, though, is like, here's another aspect that I don't think I would have consciously chosen.
Sure.
And I'm not even sure I did consciously choose it.
Yeah, right.
But I know enough to know that 88% of what we do all day, every day is coming from the subconscious.
Yeah.
And so it just tells me there's something beyond my conscious mind that has some level of direction in how this whole thing unfolds. And I'm more of like the person getting to experience it. And if I can be okay with that, then it's a lot easier to take on and handle things that you're like, I didn't want this. But did you really not want it, or did you just think that you didn't want it? And so my wife definitely has been able to be
she was 40 when she got pregnant.
She was. We announced at her 40th birthday party to all of our family. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. She officially found out 5 days before her 40th birthday.
That's wild.
And, you know, it's challenging. I mean, it has absolutely changed our life. We're entrepreneurs. We travel. We're very independent. We've raised our older kids to be very independent. I mean, they stay at home by themselves for a week at a time if we're gone or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, like, this has been radical change.
Yeah, a complete change.
And for Caroline, she's been able to be very transparent and honest. If she let her mind take her to certain places, she could have a lot of resentment.
Yeah.
And go, wait, I don't want this. You know, and every time maybe she has to take care of baby Arrow instead of doing something she really wants to do.
Right.
Or maybe he wakes up in the middle of the night or whatever it is.
And she kind of like paid her dues already in a sense.
Yeah. And then it's, oh, well, I'm resentful to Ryan. I mean, it's his fault. And so, but what's so cool is, again, here's the invitation. How do you win that moment?
Yeah.
It's either an invitation to go, yeah, but what kind of perspective change could I have?
Yeah.
How could I see this from a different angle?
Well, it certainly seems like a miracle baby, right? So,
man,
so is that
I'm not
baby,
even supposed to be here, bro.
Right? Yeah. Is that baby teaching you guys something, or is that baby going to do something incredible? Like, obviously, the universe really had to work hard to get that baby here.
Oh man, if you saw some of the pictures of, you know, when I was going through it, man, like I look like death. I mean, I was told I had 2 to 3 months to live in 2015. So
that was when your first diagnosis was 2015.
Yeah.
And so how old were you when you got that diagnosis?
35.
Wow.
Yeah, so you're exactly right. And I think one of my favorite aspects of having baby Arrow is seeing the interaction between the 3 older children, especially like the way my daughter essentially can completely take care of him, and just his bond, you know, and the way Arrow looks at her and goes to her and, you know, sissy. And I'm thinking, wow, how's that going to shape them? What amazing things are going to come from their sense of feeling responsible?
Yeah, for sure.
All of the things they're learning about another human, the way it changed the dynamic of our family. Like, I feel like I have greater appreciation and seeing greater things in my older 3 children that I don't know I was seeing as well before the baby came.
Sure, there's new opportunities to see different perspectives, you know? My youngest sister's 13 years younger than me. And so my parents kind of did that same thing where it was like, wow, they kind of started over again.
Yeah.
Because like, you know, my one sister's 10 years younger and the other one is 13 years younger. So when I was 10, I was the only kid. It's like, it was pretty well all figured out for them. Like, I was self-sufficient, take care of myself. And then here they come. And so it was really interesting for me to be on that side of it, because then I watched them be parents. Like, my childhood was completely different than their childhood because we were born in 2 different generations, really, you know? So it was so interesting to watch how differently they parented me versus how they parented my younger sisters.
Well, you know, I don't know how much your audience believes that like everything's energy. And if you start thinking about terms like vibration and frequency, and you start making some connections as to kind of like how this whole thing works. But my wife and I, interesting enough, we had a very challenging start, I would say, when it came to like sex and intimacy and that component of a relationship.
Interesting.
When we first got married. And we've had quite the journey in that realm. And
quick question. I hate to stop you, but so you were with her since high school. So did you guys wait until you were married to be intimate?
we were raised in a religion that you were in massive trouble. I mean, that was a no-no.
And what was your religion?
I was a Christian. I mean, we were raised
Christian.
in Christianity. You know, you're going to hell. You're not allowed to, you know.
So it creates a lot of blocks, because if someone says something's wrong forever, and then you get married, it still feels just as wrong. You just
right.
said,
How are you supposed to go to a 45-minute ceremony with a steeple up and then get a certificate from the state?
And now it's okay, yeah.
And you're supposed to love it, and it's supposed to be incredible and awesome. Like, it doesn't even make any sense.
Well, I guess that's another part of it, right? Because you build up, or it's built up for you, that like, this is this amazing thing that you've never been able to do. It's kind of like if you were told that Splash Mountain's incredible your whole life, but you can't go on it. And then you go on it, and it's only like 1 minute long. And you're like, oh, That's disappointing.
Right.
I don't think I really care to go on Splash Mountain again.
100%, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just fascinating to me that was our journey, because I saw a funny meme the other day. It was, Father's Day this last weekend. And the meme said, kids, you should really thank your father for the fact that you're here, because mom probably wasn't even in the mood.
I saw that.
Did you see that?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. And so I showed it to my wife or whatever. And she goes, well, you can't say that about Baby Arrow. And so, a lot of people will essentially, I've heard people say, oh man, the best sex of my life was like, when I was in college or whatever. Man, it's been the reverse for us. It took us 2 decades of working through all of our programming, all of our conditioning.
Yeah.
And so the joke around our house is my wife's like, well, damn it, if it wasn't so good, we wouldn't have him. And so I don't say that like to brag, because trust me, I mean, it's in some ways a miracle that we are still together and made it through that. And whether people want to admit it or not, that category is
important.
Kind of
Gotta
important.
Check that box.
Like you aren't going to make it in a long-term committed relationship, or even in, other types of relationship, unless that subject grows
unless
and
your
heals.
intimacy box is checked.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about just physical sex.
Sure.
But that seems to be a natural aspect of people who are connected, emotionally connected, and, like each other.
And so you've been with your wife for 23 years. How many have you been married? Or is that 23 years
27 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, since 96. We started dating when I was a freshman or sophomore, and she was a freshman in high school. And then we've been married 23. We got married in 2000.
So I started dating my wife when she was in high school also, and she grew up LDS. So she had a lot of that same, blockage and difficulty. And she's like, look, I'm sorry. It's just, I can't, like, it was always so forbidden. I can't just be okay with it. And so we've been together for 17 years. And so I can really be compassionate to like what that's like going through that and the struggles of it and how important it is. And you're totally right that as you build all of that, it gets so much better in time. But there is a lot you have to work with.
Oh, I'd say we still are discovering things that are in there.
Absolutely.
They're so deeply embedded. Yeah. Like I would say we don't even realize they're there until all of a sudden they just finally surface.
Yeah.
And you're like, whoa.
Yeah, my wife had to do a lot of work like internally to get to a point that she could finally like allow herself to think it was okay and enjoy it. And
I would say just in the last 5 years, my wife actually truly moved it from a category of like a duty to actually like something you look forward
from a chore to a hobby.
To actually like, oh, that's actually something I want. It's pleasurable. It's nice. It's great. Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy.
Like, one of the most magnificent things of being a human being is that you get to discover sex.
Right.
And then to have it in such a ridiculous category, like, oh, let me check that off the box for the week.
Yeah.
God, so glad I don't have to do that again for 7 days or whatever.
Or a year or whatever.
I mean, like, we joke about it, but it's terrible.
It is terrible.
And just because we happen to be on that subject, I'm not sure how I got there other than I'm a male.
Yeah, this is a first.
Yeah, right? But because I've interacted with so many people with cancer, Cody, it's unbelievable. If I happen to get introduced to some guy, a male, who is dealing with prostate cancer.
And that's the kind you had as well?
No, I had lymphoma. Okay. But I just wanted to make this connection so I can bring the audience to that. Maybe they can go from, it's kind of funny, we're making light of it, we're joking. But on a serious note, I don't care who you are, man. If you don't deal with anything inside that you're not satisfied and happy and fulfilled with when it comes to your sex and sexuality, it's going to eventually show up.
Oh, yeah.
In a way you're not going to want.
Absolutely.
So every single time I've ever interacted with and gotten to talk to a male who's dealing with a diagnosis of prostate cancer, I ask him a question. And I say on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being phenomenal, 1 being horrible, how would you rate how you feel about yourself sexually, and how would you rate your sex life? And no guy has ever said higher than a 2.
Wow. And what do you think the correlation is?
So the cancer is showing up in the organ and in the part of the body that physically represents all of the psychological, mental, and emotional unresolved stuff that is attached.
Wow. When did you discover that? 2.5
years of trying to figure out how to not die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So a bunch of things that you opened up that I kind of want to unpack. One thing before we kiss, I want to hear your cancer story. And I'm curious because you talked about you have a naturopath doctor. So I'm curious to see if those two are linked together in any way. But the other thing is you talked about the subconscious. So what turned you on to the power of the subconscious? Was there an author or a book or a speaker? Like what got you tuned into that reality?
Yeah, so I do look back on my life prior to my diagnosis of, by the way, I had stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I was diagnosed in October of 2015, and the first oncologist that I met with went over the PET scan, and he just said, there's no cure. The cancer is going to kill you, and it might even kill you in 2 to 3 months.
Wow.
The only thing we can really offer you is chemotherapy, and depending on whether or not your body can handle it, we may be able to put you in remission, but it's going to come back. You're going to have to repeat treatment, and if we can extend your life a few years, I mean, we'd be thrilled.
Wow.
Like, you got any other options? And so I was a seeker, and I was definitely someone that had been asking questions.
Yeah.
Maybe some people would have categorized me as being rebellious or, whatever. So I was that person on some level prior, but this life event took it to a whole nother level.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Because I'm like, okay, well, I mean, my first thought is cancer's picked on the wrong dude. I'm gonna find a way to live.
Did you consider yourself a healthy person before the diagnosis? Were you surprised or?
I was, but now learning what I've learned, I realize I really wasn't.
Got it.
But based on what I knew about health then, I assumed I was. I'd really never had any health challenges of any sort, never broken a bone. I was playing tennis, in my 30s. I was coaching my kids in basketball. I didn't really feel bad. Now, compared to how great I feel today, I realized there were signs, there were things now that I would pick up on, but I was just unaware. I just didn't know any better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know.
Correct. So I have to give a tremendous amount of credit, I guess you will, to my cancer journey. To answer your question, it really was during that time that I just became so open. So I'm
You're
literally
just like, feed me with information of every kind.
So I started with all kinds of external changes, radical diet change, looking into alternative treatments and therapies. I went to this place called Chipsa Hospital in Mexico. I went to a clinic in the Philippines. I mean, I figured I don't have anything to lose. Conventional medicine is basically telling me they don't have any answers and I'm going to die.
What was your wife's support or how did she feel about you going and looking at all these alternatives?
Well, the interesting thing is she would have been the one that was way more health conscious than I was.
Got it.
So this all interested her.
Yeah.
So she didn't really have any resistance
Yeah.
to all of these external changes. She had many times wanted me to change the way I ate and exercise more and do certain things, and I just hadn't been willing or open.
Sure.
So in that sense, I mean, she was primed and ready to be the most magnificent supporter for a person willing to take a road less traveled, if you will, when it comes to cancer. So the first 14 months, I would say, were primarily about radical external change. Now, there were definitely seeds planted. I mean, when we went to the alternative hospital in Tijuana, Mexico, after I was there for a few days, I stayed for like a month the first time in November of 2015, a doctor pulled my wife, Caroline, aside. And he said, I've spent some time with Ryan, and I can tell you, we can offer the most world-class treatments in all the world. I mean, we can do all kinds of amazing things to try to help him overcome cancer. But he's angry. And if he doesn't deal with his resentment and learn to let go of his anger, his chances of making it aren't very good.
Isn't that amazing? It's so important, the things that we think, because they become a reality, right? And then you talked about frequency and vibration. I don't know if you correlate those, but I do.
Oh, 100%.
Your frequency and vibration of your body was negative.
100%.
And cancer thrives in negativity, right?
Oh, without a doubt. So what's funny is then when the doctor and her came to deliver that news, I got angry telling them that I'm not an angry person.
Of course, yeah, of course. Well, you always know those people in your life who are angry, and then because I love them, I'm going to help them and tell them, but they're going to be angry at you for doing that. Like, you already know their disposition is anger.
Right. So, I don't remember how long it took before I kind of got over myself and realized that was just the egoic conscious part of my brain.
Yeah.
But again, 14 months from October of 2015 to December 2016, I did get a clear PET scan, and I had overcome it. And
Did you do any chemo?
Not in that stretch. I
Okay,
did
so
not.
in that stretch of time, you
Yeah.
only did natural.
Yes.
It's really encouraging to hear a doctor talk in that way, talking about like, well, he's angry and that's going to affect him versus just like solely medications and putting like those things in your body, but actually talking about holistically, how's Ryan going to heal?
Yeah, I mean, if God forbid you had, let's say shot yourself and you had a hole in your leg from the bullet and you tried to slap a Band-Aid on it, I mean, what's that going to do?
Yeah.
So I think, unfortunately, we just have a big misconception. We're slapping a lot of Band-Aids
Right.
on a lot of things that unless we get to the root of them, they're never really going to heal.
And I've always felt like for me, I've never been a big believer in like the doctors or any of that kind of stuff. And I just never did it my whole life. And I always felt like if my body had the ability to create it, I believe my body has the ability to defeat it.
You nailed
Like,
it.
because if it started
Absolutely.
with inside of me, then certainly what's inside of me can eliminate it as well.
You probably just basically summarized my greatest revelation around cancer, illness, health, disease. And that was, I realized on some level at some point during my journey, oh, wow, the whole world essentially looks at cancer like it's an outside invader that randomly attacks people with cosmic bad luck.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of response would humans have if that's how they're viewing it? Well, it's disempowered.
Poor me.
Yeah, I'm a victim.
Yeah.
I just got bad luck.
Yeah.
So now I've just got to hope, pray, and wish that I'm one of the few that have some good luck, or otherwise I'm just going to be one of the 2 million that pass away, and I'll just be another statistic, and I'll just have to chalk it up to bad luck.
It's interesting because we had a friend of ours that got diagnosed with cancer a few years back. And I remember thinking, and I felt bad for thinking this, but I was like, I'm not actually surprised because she was so negative and like would create so much anxiety and stress over everything that I was like, I'm not surprised that she got it because of how she reacts to things. And I felt kind of bad thinking that, but I couldn't help. That's what I thought. That it's like of the people I know who got it, her being one of them, that didn't surprise me.
I mean, it sounds like that wasn't judgment, that was observation.
Sure.
And it's healthy for us to be observers because sometimes seeing something in another can be a mirror that reflects back and shows us something that maybe we haven't been looking at within ourselves.
Sure.
And so that's like contrast. If I see someone who's going through a really, really tough, life, and maybe it was of their making, maybe it wasn't, either way, I instantly have heightened gratitude for my life.
Yeah. Right.
So I can still feel empathy. I can still witness to their challenges. I can still, think, wow, that must be tough. And maybe I can do something in the moment. Maybe there's really nothing I can do.
Yeah.
But what I can do more than anything else is I can take that as contrast. Because if I've never been sick, I probably take my health for granted.
Oh, absolutely.
If I've never been without, I probably take abundance for granted.
Yep.
If I've never experienced being alone, I probably take my relationships for granted.
Yeah, my background was in sales, and I can remember one day talking to one of the sales reps. He's like, "Oh gosh, dude, I'm sorry, I'm just having a bad day. Like I can't get a sale to save my life." And I said, "You know what, dude? You got to have bad days to appreciate the good. Because if you never had a day like this, the day you're selling off so many things wouldn't feel so good because you wouldn't know the despair of struggle."
Right.
I was like, so just chalk this up as an opportunity for when you do succeed to really appreciate that success because now you know what this day feels like.
So good. Yeah, so became cancer-free, and that was in December of 2016.
And that was all, like, what you would test that to the most. So you went
radical diet change,
Okay.
all kinds of alternative treatments and therapies. I mean, I did, saunas and IVs and high-dose vitamin C and, all kinds of different supplements and a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. I mean, oh gosh, I can't. It's hard to even remember.
Was there a main diet that you did during that time that you found like, oh, this
definitely
is the best?
Plant-based, vegan,
okay.
even raw vegan at one point. And I would say the science primarily shows that when you go to like juicing and a more plant-based, that activates detoxing of the body.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily subscribe to thinking that's how I don't eat that way now, but it did make a lot of sense back then. Because if you just think about, you said it a minute ago and you nailed it, the body can heal itself.
Yeah.
Okay? But we can interfere with the body doing what it was
Yeah.
designed to do. And one way we do that is by basically making it difficult for the body to be freed up to go and heal itself. Because let's say, for example, certain things, certain foods might take several days to digest.
Yeah.
When you're juicing and basically eating a plant-based lifestyle, man, the body can break that stuff down and digest it within a couple of hours.
Yeah.
So the way I looked at it as, if I eat this, I may only deter my body for 2 or 3 hours, and then it can get right back to healing.
Yeah.
But if I eat this over here and it takes 3 days
Yeah.
for it to get back to work, that's going to make it a lot harder for me to heal.
Yeah, I just barely did a parasite cleanse. So for 10 days, I could only eat organic fruit. And then if you really felt like you needed substance, you could have a pureed soup. That way
Okay.
you weren't digesting anything.
Okay.
And then you do an enema every day as well.
Yeah,
And
I've done over 600 coffee enemas.
I was going to ask you if that
Yeah.
was a part of your...
It was.
And so I went to, there's a gal here in St. George, and she had, what is the bed called, a colonic? Is that what it's called?
Or colonics? Yeah, I've had those
Yep.
done.
So I
Yeah.
did that, and it was like to see the parasites. This is maybe a little bit graphic, but it was just like, man, that is inside of me.
Right.
You know, and like we talked about anger and emotion and frequency. And it's like those things are, because I thought to myself, when I did it, I started feeling like, oh, you know what? I can't wait to eat and have a good salad or have this. I was like, that's interesting. Because I would have thought, I can't wait to have pizza or a cheeseburger or French fries. And I thought, I wonder if like those parasites obviously want the bad stuff because that's what they live off of.
Yeah.
So as part of my desire, like, because they're inside of me, they're living in me, their frequency of like, feed me the nasty stuff. Is that a part of that desire? And I have no idea, but it was a very interesting process to go through.
Well, I think one of my eye-opening things was because I've never really been overweight for the most part, although now I see a lot of inflammation and old pictures and stuff in my face.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like I was a specimen for health necessarily or an athlete. But I believe that what radically changing my diet, a couple things happened. One, somehow I developed a fear, and I was a very picky eater. And I had a hard time, like, even trying things.
Like younger in your life?
Yeah,
Or- okay,
yeah. It started somewhere in my childhood.
That's how I was
and
too.
then-
I wouldn't eat anything. I wouldn't try. I didn't
But
even have
that
a
actually
salad.
brought me a lot of stress and anxiety. I don't know if you've ever been at like an event and you're like
Oh,
nervous because should I eat before I go in case there's stuff there that I don't like, and then I don't want to
Yeah.
look like an idiot or be embarrassed. So, I mean, there was a whole thing I had to work through.
Yeah.
But interesting enough, one of the first things I started seeing a change in for me was my ability to just try things and change my diet. I wanted to live so bad. All of a sudden it was like, I don't
None of
care
that
anymore.
mattered.
None
Yeah.
of that mattered. So I realized that is really just a psychological thing. And then the other thing, Cody, that was just mind-blowing was how much food owned me.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that didn't sit well with me.
And during my cleanse, I told my wife, I said, you know what? I am craving emotional food because I'm not hungry. Like I can eat as much fruit as I want, but damn, do I want some pasta. And it has nothing to do with like being hungry or anything like that, or like that I need the carbohydrates. Like I want the emotional feeling
Man.
of pasta. Like that, I'm actually craving emotion, not food. And so it was really interesting to connect that, like, that's what I wanted. I didn't want a cookie because I wanted the sugar. I wanted a cookie because a cookie tastes like happiness.
I mean, I think that's just something we could probably spend the rest of the podcast just talking about
Yeah.
that. And probably food's something that does that. There's probably other vices and other aspects
Well,
of
yeah,
our...
even like alcohol for me, if I'm not drinking, it helps me if I make like if I put even a flavored drink in a cocktail glass and drink it like I would if it was a whiskey, because that like just the emotion of like having my glass,
Fascinating.
you know, that makes it easier.
Wow.
Which is all bullshit. It's all
Right.
just messed up stuff in our mind.
100%.
Obviously,
100%. Oh, without a doubt.
nothing real is happening besides I'm trying to trick myself
Yeah.
into thinking that like, oh, this is good.
Yeah. So I get the clear PET scan then in December 2016, and we decide we're going to sell our house and buy an RV, and we're going to travel the U.S.
And did you feel like when you got that clear scan, like you beat it? Like,
Oh, man, I've
it was
slayed the
behind you?
dragon, bro. It's over, man. I mean, yeah. I mean, I had done everything and more than anyone I'd ever met had been willing to do. So
what is the success rate of like how many people at your stage 4 beat it? What's the percentage of people who actually survive?
Oh, man. I mean, I would say it's definitely, I know for a fact it's less than 10%. It's
Okay,
probably
wow.
closer to 5.
Wow.
And they would say anybody that lives 5 years, they would actually consider a success.
Okay, so even though they only live for 5 years.
Yeah,
after
they don't necessarily look at it as you completely overcame it or it never comes back.
So you had a whole new lease on life.
Oh man, 100%. So then we took a celebration trip and took the kids to Disney, and then I went skiing for the first time, in a year and a half. And that was a powerful thing because about 4 months into my journey, I've lost 50 pounds. I have this horrible fluid problem. I'm in and out of the ER all the time. I'm having 15 liters a week drained out of me. I'm in more
Just like what?
Well, it's called ascites, where fluid builds up in your abdomen, and then it's called pleural effusions, where it builds up in your lungs. And it's basically my lymphatic system was clogged; it was backed up, and so
it
it
had to go
wasn't.
somewhere.
It had to go somewhere. And it was building up in these areas. So horrible coughing attacks, unbelievable pressure in the stomach, no room left then to eat. So I'm malnutritioned. I'm 118 pounds, 6 feet tall. I mean, I look like skin and bones.
That's
okay.
nothing.
If you see a picture of me back then, just my face alone, I mean, I look like an old man. I literally look like I was 70. Wow. And so when people see me today that witness that journey, because I was basically updating my Facebook in real time almost every single day, pictures, videos, the whole 9 yards, all through the whole entire journey. I mean, there are videos out there that have been seen millions of times around the world. There was a stretch in there, I was averaging 50 inbox messages a day.
Wow.
People reaching
Just like
out.
supporters, like giving you.
Well, yeah. I had to raise money because insurance didn't pay for all of this. So I fundraised on GoFundMe.
Wow.
And I raised over $200,000.
Wow.
Over 800 humans donated to me, including someone that I've still to this day only been able to Zoom with. I did not know them ever. They were just a follower because I made my profile public, and they donated like $50,000.
Oh my God.
And so I finally got to Zoom with this person, and I said, why? I mean, first of all, they're very well off, so that really wasn't necessarily a lot of money to them. But this is what they told me. They were in about their 50s, and they said, from time to time, I'll have a little bit of fear, like, man, what would I do if I got cancer? And they said, I just somehow stumbled onto your videos and seeing your journey, and I thought, man, this guy's really convinced he can do it. And I thought, well, the least I can do is see
Help
if he
him.
can.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I told myself,
Gives me goosebumps.
if I fund this guy's journey or help fund it, because I needed more than just that, and he makes it, then I'll always know, if God forbid I ever get that diagnosis, I can beat it.
Yeah.
And here's the amazing thing, Cody. I think it was about 2 years ago, he sent me a message, and he had to have a heart transplant. Okay? And dude, oh my God. I mean, what he wrote and how much he gave credit to how much I had inspired him, and how he was feeling like he could navigate what was in front of him because of what he had
confidence
witnessed.
to believe he could do it.
And I just read the other day he ran a half marathon.
Wow. That's amazing.
I mean, just
Yeah, that's amazing.
so you just never know what your courage, what your guts, what your winning might end up doing for another human who's just
Absolutely.
observing.
Absolutely.
It may not be that they face the same challenge, but maybe there's a similar thing they're going to face in their human journey, and they're going to draw on what they observed, what they witnessed, what they took in, what they learned. And you don't really need to be conscious that I don't think I'm looking for someone to send me a message every day and affirm me that I'm making a difference in the world.
Right.
The way I really know if I'm making a difference in the world is if I live day in and day out, and I have self-love, self-respect, I have integrity with myself, I honor myself, and I know that either one, if I didn't show up the way I wanted to, I owned it, and I asked for forgiveness and apologized. And two, that I'm proud of me for continuing to be willing to engage, to grow, to evolve, and to show up more times than not in the way that I would want to.
Yeah, it's a powerful message.
And then trust that whether anybody ever tells me or not, I'm going to be entangled with humanity.
Yeah,
I mean,
all you can do is what you're in control of.
That's
You
it.
don't get a control of someone else perceives you or
And
receives
so
you.
I really try to practice that to the best of my ability so that I'm not the old people pleaser Ryan who was addicted to needing affirmation from someone.
Interesting. So prior to your cancer, it did matter to you.
It did.
Okay, that's interesting.
But see, if I need the affirmation that I'm nailing it, then that meant I also took in everyone's opinion who thought I was doing it wrong.
Right.
Whereas today, I don't need it so much or necessarily from the outside. So if you disagree with something,
Doesn't impact you.
That's fair, right? Like you're allowed to have your opinion.
I have an interesting question because obviously religion was a part of your upbringing. And so did this cancer that you went through, did it make you more or less religious?
100% less.
Less.
Yeah.
Interesting. So where do you sit now?
I don't have a label. I don't associate with anything. I haven't been to a church in over 7 years. I have no interest in needing to be tethered to one way of thinking. I'm a spiritual, dynamic, ever-evolving human being who definitely feels that there is some sort of power, source, life force that exists.
Yeah.
And I'm way more interested in knowing how I can be tapped in and tuned into whatever that phenomenon is than I am arguing over whose interpretation is more accurate than another.
Yeah. Love that.
And I no longer have any need for certainty.
Yeah, and it's like you had it anyways.
I didn't.
Yeah, so,
I had the illusion of certainty, right?
Right, yeah.
But I'm now truly okay, and I truly embrace and accept that I'm a guest here on the universe.
Yeah.
I didn't put this thing together.
And that's the word that I use for it, is the universe, because to me, it's just the most fitting. I've never been a religious person by any means, or felt or ever understood why you would commit to one thing when there's so many and you just can't know. And so for me, I was always like, well, I don't want to ever say I'm this, because what if that person over here says something I really agree with? Like, I want to just be open and just give me as much information as possible. And I do think there is a thing, there is a source, there is a universe, there is this, you can feel it, right? You can feel the energy in the room, you can feel it.
Right, but words fall short.
Yeah,
Trying
absolutely.
to give language to the phenomenon of God is like saying, I can describe the indescribable.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I can name the unnameable. Nah, we can't. Right? So the reason, though, why so many people are aligned with one way is because they were trained at a stage when they were young, when our subconscious mind was a sponge.
Yep.
There's an old saying in the Catholic Church that says, give me a child till they're 7 and I'll have them for life.
Yeah.
So that's why it happens.
Yeah. Well, and then once you're a part of a community, then you almost feel like if you don't have that community, who do you have?
So that brings up such a fascinating thing. What if there are actually a large group of people that, if they were brutally honest, they don't really actually believe anymore what they were told to believe. But the fact that they would lose love and acceptance that they perceive from parents, siblings, close friends, their community, people they're known, they will double down or stay in it or tolerate a bunch of stuff they don't even really align with.
I have many friends who are just doing it because they're like, well, it's good for me, so I want to do it for my kids. And yeah, I don't really know if I believe in it, but it's nice to have the community, or my parents should be disappointed or whatever. You know, there's all this laundry list of reasons. And it is so interesting. It'd be great to know what percentage of people actually truly in their heart of hearts believe in the place they go every Sunday.
Well, what kind of relationship do you actually have with any of those people if you announcing that you have some questions or that you might see it different, and then they're just going to immediately be like, oh, we're not in a relationship anymore. I abandoned. Well, what do you really even have anything in the first place?
Yeah.
Is that really how you want to go about your life?
And I think they probably know the answer, and that's why they don't want to do it, because that's a tough thing to face.
Well, read the book, The Body Keeps Score, and you'll eventually figure out that if you don't face it, you may not make it.
I like that.
Face it so you'll make it.
At what point in your journey did you start to feel that way? Did you start to pull away from your religion?
Yeah, so I think it had happened on some level even prior to cancer. But to kind of pick back up here and answer that question and my story. So we sell our house over the next 6 months in early 2017. We buy an A-class
Was that
RV.
in Tulsa too?
Yep.
Okay.
And we take off in June of 2017. And a few weeks into the trip, we're actually out in Vegas at the moment, and my wife and I were going through some emotional intelligence training. That was kind of how we started our travels on the road.
Okay.
And I started having all these crazy symptoms. And long story short, in August of 2017, they re-diagnosed me with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma again, and it had showed up in 3 new places.
Wow. So how long from when you thought you were clean until
7 months.
Oh my gosh. That had to have been just devastating because you had the jubilation of victory. And
It
was
actually
so
felt,
short-lived.
it actually was a bigger punch in the gut than the original diagnosis.
Of course, because you had already defeated it.
I mean, I was fucking pissed.
Yeah, talk about being angry before.
What the hell? How could this happen to me?
Yeah.
Right? And so it took me a few days.
So you were in Vegas when you found out?
Yes.
Okay.
And so then we decided we would move the RV to San Diego so that we'd be close to the Mexico border, so that way I could go back over to Chipsa and Tijuana. Yeah. And it took me a few days. Thankfully, I couldn't pinpoint it to one thing. I mean, someone sent me a book called Dying to Be Me by Anita Moorjani, and I read that, and that opened my mind to this connection between consciousness and vibration and frequency and the way you feel about it on the inside, and that everything is really dis-ease. And there were probably some other podcasts. This gentleman named Rob Bell, I just started immersing myself in his stuff. He basically was like my bridge. Like, well, if I don't believe everything I was taught as a Christian,
yeah,
how do I transition out of that?
Yeah.
You feel so untethered.
Yeah, right.
Okay, and it's scary.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you don't have any answers, so then people are drilling you.
Because up to that point in your life, that's the thing you believed in the most.
Yes. So thankfully, I got this idea, and I thought, okay, I took a deep breath, or many deep breaths, a step back, and I started talking to my cancer. And I said, okay, cancer, what's the invitation? What is it that I don't know that I need to know? What am I missing? I've made every change known to man, and that wasn't enough. So what's the rest of the story? And it just felt like the floodgates opened up. And before I knew it, I was reading books on quantum physics. I was seeing chakra healers. I was listening to podcasts morning, noon, and night. I couldn't get enough.
Interesting.
Of this world around everything going on psychosemantically, psychologically, mentally, emotionally. All of that just seemed to come to the forefront. And I was like, that is the true foundational source of illness.
So if you, like you talked about a chakra healer, would your pre-2015 self ever have been willing to see a chakra healer?
Oh, hell no.
Would have been like, that's kooky crazy.
Well, yeah, and I wouldn't have wanted all the criticism from all my religious friends.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, that would have been like going and seeing the devil or something.
Yeah.
And all it is it was just stuff outside of anything I'd ever been exposed to.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating how quick we are as humans when we live in lower levels of consciousness, how quick we are to just criticize stuff we don't even know anything about.
Yeah, I think that's like a learned thing because that's how you stay in that lower level of consciousness, right? Because someone does something new and then your aunt, your brother, your mother's like, oh no, that person's crazy. So you're taught like, oh, okay, yeah. So if someone lifts their level of consciousness, then they're outsiders,
right?
And we stay here comfortable,
right?
You know, versus you're one of those people in your life being like, oh, that's interesting. Let's see why they're doing that. You don't have to agree with it or even do it, but let's get some perspective as to why they're doing.
Well, that's like one of my transitions was I'm no longer today threatened by anyone who sees something different than I do. Today, I'm fascinated. I'm curious.
Yeah.
So
I always love to have conversations with people who think differently than me, and it's tough, especially in today's society, because if I share a perspective that's different than theirs, sometimes they take such offense to it. And it's coming from a
really
place
sad.
of, yeah, it's like, no. I'm not here to offend you. I'm just genuinely curious why you think what you think, and let's just have a dialogue about it.
It's not about being right.
Yeah. And so many things there isn't a right or wrong. It's just different perspectives.
That's Rumi's perspective. Beyond the ideas of right or wrong, there is a field.
Yeah.
And I will meet you there.
I love that.
So here I am, and all of a sudden I get this sense like, oh man, I'm on to something. And my wife was scared because the fluid problem came on really strong again. I'm in the hospital. It got
What was your
scary.
diagnosis? Did they say like, oh, you're going to die really soon again? Or
I mean, I think just stage 4 non-Hodgkin's
Same as
lymphoma,
before.
nothing, and it's in 3 new places.
Yeah.
And so she felt like we need to take action very quickly. And I get it, okay? And I'm not throwing her under the bus because I still make my own decisions. But I went ahead and decided to do some chemotherapy. And I mainly did it for 2 reasons. Number 1, I decided in my mind it couldn't hurt me. And
Okay.
number 2, if that was going to give her some peace and keep her calm in the moment, I knew I was going to be working over here, though, on all this other stuff. And I thought, I'll just do it for right now. It's fine. I was also doing still all the alternative things and drinking green juices and detox foot baths and all that stuff. But I just remember looking at her in the eye, down her throat and into her heart. And I said, I have no idea how I know this, but I'm telling you, I am not going to die. Like something miraculous is starting to unfold internally. And I think it's going to be a minute before my body catches up. So I don't know what the time frame is or what this, but I'm just telling you, just go on this journey with me. I'm gonna make it. I just know. I don't know how I know, but I know.
Given that you were in the RV and away from like home base, did she want to go back to Tulsa, or did she like that you were in San Diego so you could be close to Tijuana?
Yeah, I think she liked that.
What about
you
for
know?
your kids?
I remember one time we actually sent them back to Tulsa so they could just stay with their grandparents and have a more
Be with their friends. And
for like 3 or 4 weeks at a time. You know.
Yeah.
And I remember a stretch when I was in San Diego. And Caroline chose to continue to go through the emotional intelligence training, and I think looking back, that was a very wise decision. It was an outlet for her. She was very supported in that environment.
Yeah.
And everyone there knew what was going on back at the RV.
Yeah.
And thankfully, we had the ability. We met this gentleman named Theo, and he lived in San Diego, and he would literally come and just stay with me while she would be in Vegas for a few days.
Wow.
And I couldn't hardly get out of bed. It hit me. It came on that strong again.
Wow.
But something was transforming moment by moment, day by day. So if I could just lay in bed, I was either reading or listening to something.
And you had a different level of because I don't imagine your first time through you had that undeniable confidence of like, no, there's a bigger purpose here. I'm making it. Or did you have that same confidence the first time?
That's a tough question to answer. I do know from the very get-go. Yeah, there was still a part of me that's like, I don't know if I can do this.
Sure.
But I think the bigger part of me was like, cancer picked on the wrong dude.
Yeah.
I'm going to figure this out. And I know early on, Cody, I made a decision that even if I didn't make it and my runway ran out, I remember very distinctly, consciously thinking about this. And I thought, because my greatest fear and the greatest mental thing I had to overcome early on in this was the thought that my kids would grow up without their dad.
Of course.
Or that my wife would be a widow in her 30s. Or that she would eventually meet another guy, and what if he was a jerk? And what if he hurt her?
And
And
what
what if he did
are in
something?
that home with this,
Man, that would just destroy me
especially
internally.
where you guys had that unique partnership that started at such a young age and all you knew was each other. That's more challenging, more devastating.
Yes. And so I made a very, very deep commitment that I didn't know if I could make it. I didn't know if I could overcome it. I believed I could. And I mean, I was going to do everything within my power to find a way. But if I didn't, I wanted to make sure that those 3 children and my wife would always be able to remember this journey before I passed away. And they would always immediately think, man, my dad and my husband, that guy would not give up, man.
Yeah.
I mean, his attitude, his perseverance, his resilience, his willingness. I mean, the pain he endured, like he still smiled. Like I decided if the only thing I was going to leave him was that I wasn't going to be here in physical form, they were going to have that to take with them for the rest of their time here. And hopefully that would be an ongoing, non-physical piece of inspiration.
It's amazing the power of your mind, because really it started with a choice in your mind that I'm not going to let this happen.
Oh, and speaking of that, I forgot. I was about to tell you this. So 4 months into my journey, by the way, this was probably a component I look back now and realize, I was starting to be drawn to this, internal aspect, even though I was real focused on all these external changes, I got this idea of having a friend of ours paint a picture of an aggressive skier going down a mountain. And I had a canvas that she painted for me put up in my room. And I visualized and imagined,
oh wow,
to the nth degree of what it was going to be like when I skied again.
Yeah.
I mean, down to how would my wife's lips feel? What would the tears feel like coming down my cheek when I got to the bottom of the run? What would my kids say to me? How would they look at me? And when I skied for the first time, after the first time I had cancer, okay? When I got to the bottom of the hill after that first run, I realized I now knew what deja vu was. My brain thought I had already done it.
Yeah.
My brain truly believed
you did.
I had.
Yeah.
I had spent so much time.
I mean, there's so many studies about people who have that real intentional thought and how often, and I even for me, I can remember we were reading a book with our group, like my company, and I got to an epiphany of like, man, I always get what I want. I just never wanted that much. So it's not like my life was a reflection of my inability or a lack of success. It's just that I really never wanted a whole lot. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to change the way I think, and I'm just going to want more. And then it's kind of like that thing you shared before the podcast of those people who changed their emotional connection to food and lost a bunch of weight, but stayed the same. I literally changed nothing in my life, but all these amazing things happened. Got my dream house, got my book, got my dream car, like all of this stuff. And the only thing that really genuinely shifted is I just allowed myself to want more. And instead of being afraid of like wanting more and falling short, I was like, no, I'm going to want it and I'm going to get it. And then that small shift in my thought process opened up like just the floodgates of opportunity.
I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, the truth is the whole conversation around feeling worthy and unworthiness really it shouldn't even be on the table. It's just a total bogus idea. It doesn't even exist.
Right.
It's a completely man-made thing.
Yeah, it's not like there's a number above our head and it's like, oh, worthy, not worthy. It's like that doesn't
like
exist.
The energy of money, for example, has no understanding around what we would call worthiness or unworthiness. I mean, that is just total hogwash.
Right.
Complete garbage.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about whether you're worthy or unworthy. It's about if you don't put your TV on channel 206 on DirecTV, you ain't getting ESPN at your house.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't put your antenna out for financial resources to come in and out and flow, they're not coming.
Yep.
That has nothing to do with, it doesn't, worthy, unworthy, if you put your antenna or your receiver or whatever, however TV works on 206, DirecTV, it's ESPN, like, everywhere in the entire world. It doesn't matter if you're living in Bolivia or America or Japan or Iceland, right?
Yep.
And it's the same, I learned. It's just what you just said. It's like, as soon as I realized that I had it on the wrong frequency.
Yeah.
Well, wrong's not even the right word. I just had it on a frequency that wasn't sending me ESPN.
Yeah, right.
But I wanted ESPN.
Yeah.
I had it on a frequency that was sending me struggle and broke and frustrated and not gratitude around money. And once I learned how to change my frequency, it was like, holy shit, where's this been all my whole life?
Yeah, and it's funny too because people want it to be so much more challenging than that.
Well, that's their ego.
Yeah, exactly. It was funny. My youngest sister, Sarah, she had gotten a bunch of money during COVID, like through unemployment and all that stuff, right? And I was talking to her one day. She's like, yeah, it's all gone. I wish I never got it. And I said, Sarah, what a silly thing to say. Because now you're telling the universe, like, oh, I don't actually want an abundance of free money. So universe is going to be like, if there's an opportunity, it's like, well, don't give that money to Sarah.
She don't want it.
Because it makes her unhappy.
Yeah.
I was
we wouldn't want to do that to her.
Yeah. I was like, you have got to change your relationship and your emotion with money because what you just said, and saying it's even more powerful than thinking it.
Oh.
What you just said will have negative ripple effects for the rest of your life. Like, you have got to change the way you're thinking about that. Instead, say, I'm so thankful I got this abundance of money because it showed me my inability to manage it, and that's a skill I can learn. And next time, I'll do better because I lost it all. Now I know how to be better.
So good, man.
Okay, so you're in the motorhome, you're in San Diego, second bout, and then what happens next?
Yeah, so over the next 5 months, I do chemo. We had to drive to LA for the chemo. It was once a month. And
Were you driving in the motorhome?
No, we had a Jeep
Oh,
that
you
we
did?
pulled
Okay.
behind it, you know? Sometimes my wife would go with me for the weekend to do treatments, but I remember one time taking my oldest son, and this was my attitude. This was, and mind you, I mean, I am Joe Dispenza, Dr. Bruce Lipton, How to Heal Your Life by Louise Hay, The Emotion Code. I mean, I am just anything
And your
I can
son's
find.
how old at this time?
He would have been like 12, 13, somewhere in that range. Okay. And I remember one time that me and him were going to go for the weekend. And my perspective was, I'm having a father-son weekend, and I'm just squeezing in a few chemo treatments while I'm there.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we're out riding bird scooters. They had just come out in
Yeah,
LA.
that's so fun.
We're going to the theater. We're checking out a baseball game. I mean, we are truly just having a blast, except for the 2 days out of the 4 that we were up there. I got to go in for a few hours, and they got to hook up, you know, the IV to my port and put some chemo. But I'd already decided it couldn't hurt me. So I had basically no side effects. I didn't lose my hair. I didn't really have any major challenges. And it's because I just said it can't do anything to me. The only thing it can do is benefit me.
Yeah.
I made up my mind.
And so so after you finished your chemo, is that when you were able to eradicate it? For
Yeah.
the
So
second time?
then, basically since January of 2018, I knew I was completely healed. I knew I was cancer-free. So I canceled my last chemo treatment. I'm like, I don't want to do it. And I really didn't even want to go get another scan, but I had to get one in order for the hospital to remove my port.
Oh, okay.
And I told my wife, I said, just wait till we go meet with the oncologist. He's not even going to have anything to say. She's like, what do you mean? I said, my scan is going to be so clear. Don't be surprised if he says, you look better than a healthy person, right? Like, I'm just telling you, I know. She's like, how do you know this? I'm like, I don't know. I just know. Sure enough, bro. Have the PET scan. They remove the port. His assistant like comes in before he comes in or whatever. And she's like, we literally cannot see anything. There's not a single spot anywhere. Okay. And so then he comes in and he looks at me and says, so what do you plan to do with the rest of your life?
Wow. That's great.
And we never even went over the scan. There was nothing to discuss.
Yeah. What's there to go over?
And I have not seen a regular doctor, been to an oncologist, or had a scan since then. That was over 5 years ago.
Do you have any fear at all of like
Zero.
that it's going to come? No.
And if it did, I'll navigate it.
Yeah. You already know you can do it.
My affirmation for anything that I might face in life is it might be really hard. I might have a lot of emotions. I could cry. I could have tears. It could be painful. It could last a really long time. But I'll find a way. I can navigate all things.
Do you think with the confidence and understanding that you have now, because your second time getting it was more painful than the first, if a third time happened, do you think that because of where you're at now, it would be not as impactful as that second one?
I don't even know. I mean, I think the odds are I could probably catch it before it got to a cancer
Because now
diagnosis.
you just know your body so well.
Yeah, I think if I really, I mean, I've had some colds that I couldn't seem to get over, and I just knew like, hey, let's go to my naturopath and then start reading some more about emotions. And I mean, I've still continued to discover more and more things. Like, in the last 5 years since I've overcome cancer, it's interesting because you know these are very important topics, but it's the truth. I mean, the revelations and the stuff we've unpacked and had breakthroughs when it comes to sex and money have been just mind-blowing in the last 5 years.
Speaking to you and your wife.
Yeah.
Got it.
I mean, in about 2 years ago, I just finally kind of surrendered and I said, all right, universe, kind of like what I told you when I talked to the cancer. I was like, all right, there is something in this relationship to money that I'm missing. I've made over $10 million in my life. How in the hell do I not have any of it left?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, where am I self-sabotaging? What am I doing that I'm not even aware of?
Yeah.
And I'm driving down the road. I think it was like a month or two later. I mean, I didn't even like feel like I was demanding. It's just like, hey, whenever you're ready, just bring it into my awareness, show me, reveal it to me, and I'll let it go.
Yeah.
And I'm driving down the road one day, and all of a sudden, it just comes in my awareness. I'm like, oh my God, I was raised in a financially racist home.
Explain that.
And it
Financially racist.
like
what do you
that's
mean?
not an easy thing to hear because I love my parents and my late father who passed away 2 years ago of brain cancer. They were wonderful people. So it was like, whoa, I'm asking myself, a financially racist home. And then I started to think about it. Mom and dad always felt frustrated about where they were at. You know, we always had food on the table. We always had a home, but it was paycheck to paycheck. It was struggle. My mom would go and work extra jobs. She seemed frustrated at my father because he didn't make more money.
Enough.
So he changed careers, but he really hated sales and he really loved teaching, but teaching didn't pay enough. And so that caused tension. And
that's interesting because then he's mad at her and she's mad at him. They're mad at each other. Nothing was solved. Their life was not better because of it.
And so what I realized was they accidentally then fell into weakness, and their way of trying to make themselves feel better is we made fun of rich people.
Oh, got it.
And I know the word racist seems strong.
Yeah, no, I got you.
But I think the universe wanted to make sure I fully came to understanding about what was deeply embedded that was interfering with what I knew I wanted and what I was not getting.
That's so interesting because, people be like, oh, I hate rich people. And it's like, what? Don't say that. Like, what are you talking about? Then you're just telling the universe and yourself, if a great opportunity comes, I'm going to turn it away because the last thing I want to do is be this rich person I hate.
Well, yeah, and so that's exactly what was happening, Cody, is I was on the verge many times of probably becoming a multimillionaire, had lots of business momentum, really could have went to who knows where from a financial standpoint. And I think my subconscious went, well, wait a second here. You don't want to be one of those people that mom and dad make fun of.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the person at the family reunions that your brother mocks and makes jokes about. And I think deep down in our core, love and acceptance, especially from like mom and dad, parents, siblings, family, is like a vital thing we all crave, need, and want.
Yeah.
So when my subconscious had to choose between what it thought was going to be losing their love and acceptance or giving up being rich, it's like, send that money away, baby.
Yeah,
I can't give up love and acceptance.
Yeah. It's so interesting.
And so that light bulb went on. Now, it happened to be a few months after my father passed away. So I went to my mom. Do you think
that's related? Because like the dad was gone, so now like it opened you up to not have to, you no longer could lose that love and compassion because he had passed?
No one's ever asked me that question before.
Makes
That's actually fascinating. That does make sense.
Because you're a man, so your dad's love and admiration would
and he would have been the one
who
that
was
would
the
have
most like
and
then he would have been maybe a little disgruntled because his life was so hard and your life was easy.
But he wouldn't have actually admitted it, but would have shown up in like the way he embodied. Oh, wow. I'll have to unpack that. That's very likely.
Yeah.
So I go to my mom and I tell her, I go, Mom, I'm not coming, like I'm not hostile, I'm not angry, I'm not pointing a finger, I'm not blaming. I just like to have this discussion with you. So I wanted to make sure her defenses are down. I'm not coming and saying like, oh, I can't believe you're
the reason I'm not a multimillionaire.
Yeah, no, I didn't even feel that way or even think that. Yeah. It was because I had awareness, like, I wonder if they were even aware of their own programming that caused them to even be that way. I doubt it.
Well, I don't think that their generation ever had the opportunity to even discover like programming. Like it would have never even, because like emotions, it would have been like, no, just go do your job.
Right.
Right. And so
Fair
I think
enough.
that's such a new thing where we are presented with new information where it's like, oh, there's all of this programming that happens in our subconscious that we're not even aware of. I always tell people, like, you didn't pick your name, you didn't pick where you were born, you didn't pick your parents, you didn't pick your culture, you didn't pick your religion. Like all of that stuff was chosen for you.
Correct.
And unless you become conscious, you're really never living your own life. You're living a life that someone else created for you.
That's right.
And freedom happens when you break free of that. And maybe you will consciously choose to live that life, but maybe you won't.
And that must be why there's so much depression. And is because your inner being, your essence, like the real you, the one that observes the person who's in your earth suit or in your body, you're not the one actually experiencing it. You're the one observing that you're getting to experience it. It's out of alignment.
Yeah.
So of course there's dis-ease and depression and suicides and all of these tragic things that until our mind is awakened. Like no one wants to live someone else's ideas or life or dream. We are made for autonomy.
Yep.
Right? Like one of the things we have to be willing to accept is as great as our home life might be, you may still need to give up your parents' dream for you in order to live the one you actually want to live.
Oh, yeah. In fact, that's funny. I gave a talk about winning the moment at SUU, and a gal came up to me after. Now, mind you, she showed up to the talk late, and then she only got like maybe 30 minutes of it. But in that moment of me sharing, came up to me and said, "Hey, I got to talk to you. Can you help me?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "My dad wants me to do this thing that I don't want to do. And like, I don't want to live that life. And I just don't know how to get out of it." And it's like, so, it's got to be so severe for her to come up to a stranger that she barely got the opportunity to listen to and be like, "Oh, finally someone's talking about creating your own life. And I just got to get some perspective." And I mean, she was really torn up about it.
Yeah.
Like willing to sacrifice her entire future.
Yeah.
Just to be able to be in the box that her dad wanted to put her in.
So I go to my mom and I tell her what I feel like, God, universe, source, spirit has brought to my attention. And the first couple of minutes were a little rocky, and that's not easy to hear for your son to come and say, "Hey, I think you raised me in a financially racist home."
Yeah.
But once she put her defense down and she could feel energetically like, I'm coming in love. I'm not, this is not about, this is about excitement. Like I can move forward now. And discovery. Once she accepted that and realized that, and she kind of just surrendered and kind of sunk down into her heart, she's like, "Oh, wow, son, I think that's right." And then we started to talk about her upbringing, and we started to talk about her mom and dad, and they kind of dumped that into her. And she didn't even realize it. And then she just kind of dumped it into me, not intentionally, not on purpose. And amazingly enough, here I am 18, 20 months later, and we've had the greatest year financially we've ever had in our entire human life.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing, man.
I mean, somebody asked us, we had our little boy babysit today so that the rest of us could go to, it's called Sheep's Bridge. And there's like a place where you could like kind of ride these little rapids on your tube and jump into the water. And we had a blast today. And they asked my wife and I, because we'd never met him before, we got him from a referral from a friend that lives here. And they asked us what we do for a living. I don't even really know what to answer anymore. So I just kind of try out different ones. Yeah. And I was like, "Oh, well, we're retired." They're like looking at us, like, "You guys can't, retired? What do you mean?" And I'm like, "Well, we basically just travel all around the U.S. and take trips and play in pickleball tournaments. And I mean, we're active in some things because we want to be, but we literally have plenty of money that comes in every month if I didn't even check my phone."
It's amazing what happens when you free up. And that's where, like, for me, when we talked earlier about like the universe and stuff, that's who I believe creates that opportunity. As soon as you're able to remove that block, the universe is like, "Oh, great, Ryan's ready." Shift, just like a river. A river is going to go wherever it's allowed to go. And if there's a blockage, then the river's like, "Okay, well, I'll go this way then." And so I feel like that was a blockage you had. You opened it, and the universe, "Oh, great, Ryan can have those."
But how many people, Cody, feel like I'm stuck? I've been in this situation for a really long time, and they have no idea that it could literally almost change instantly.
Yeah.
Like
the hard part
days, weeks, months, not like 2 decades.
That's the hard thing. So in the end of my book, it says like, "What do you do now?" And I said, the shitty part is the only thing I can tell you is to start. And I know we want it to be more complicated than that, because then it would make sense why we haven't done it yet. If it was easy, we don't want to believe it's easy, because then why aren't I doing it? So it has to be like, "Oh, it's a 100-step process. That's why I haven't done it yet. It's 100 steps. Like I'm going to do 1 or 2, but it's 100. It's really just 1 step." Just no one wants to admit it can be that easy, because then you have to look at yourself internally and be like, "Oh shit, if it's as easy as that."
Bro, that was worth coming on this podcast.
What am I doing?
That is so good, dude. Like I hope all my friends and everybody I'm connected to gets to hear that and now is turned on to your book, because wow, I'd never quite heard someone put it in that way. That's so true.
Yeah.
We need it. Our ego needs it to be hard.
So we can rationalize our lack of whatever you define success to, wherever you're trying to get to.
But that's not going to help.
Yeah.
It's not going to serve us well.
It's a lot easier.
Oh, man. That's good.
Yeah.
I can't wait to read it.
Yeah, thank you. So I got a couple questions I want to ask you. How long did you live in your RV with your kids for?
2 years.
How was that?
Oh, man.
You went to all 50 states?
All 50 states.
What was your favorite state?
Idaho.
That makes sense.
And Utah was way up there.
Yeah,
That's why we're here.
is
That's why we're here
crazy.
on vacation, hanging out.
Yeah, Utah is
you know?
just incredible. The landscape, there's so many different
5
things
national
you can
parks.
do. And we'd have more. We just already have 5.
Right.
Like, have you guys ever been to Goblin Valley? Have you taken your family there?
No.
Goblin Valley is like walking on Mars. And what I love about it is it's a state park. There's no trails. So it's literally like you just freely explore. And it is truly
I've never
like,
even heard of it till right now.
Yeah, 'cause
and
it's-
I've been to a lot of cool places.
Goblin Valley is like one of my favorite places to go in the state. It's just like an hour and a half outside of Capitol Reef National Park. It's
Yeah.
incredible.
Well, today it was me, my wife Caroline, my oldest 3 kids, Addison, Atlanta, and Arthur, and my mom Glinda. And we were at this Sheep's Bridge, and we had about 3 hours, and we had no cell phone service. And so, we got in the water some and floated, and then we were kind of eating snacks and different things. And, because nobody has any cell phone service, you have to talk to the people that are right around you and in front of you, right? Especially for our children.
Yeah.
And I just sat there in awe. I mean, truly, I could have just cried, man.
That's awesome.
I'm so fortunate, man. I really am. I mean, I'm so grateful I had an open mind, Cody. Obviously, I put in a ton of effort and a ton of work, but it could have easily went a different direction.
Yeah.
My runway could have ran out before I had the discovery.
And I think what's so interesting about your life too is if someone only knew you today. So let's say that person who asked you what you did for a living and you said, I'm retired, and he looks at you and you're like, well, that guy's young, he's retired. He's so lucky. Like, I wish I was Ryan, retired, young, but they have no idea the work that, you literally had to sacrifice your life to get to the point that you're at. And that's why I tell people, be really careful with who you aspire to be, because you're only seeing where they're at now.
Yes.
And if you knew what it took to get there, you may not even want it. So you may start this journey to say, I'm going to be Ryan, but not realize there are 2 terrible mountains between where you are now and where Ryan is. And if you knew that those mountains existed, you may be like, you know what? I don't think that Ryan's life is the life for me. And so when you only see the end result and you aspire for it, be really careful, because you have no idea what you got to go through to get there.
So good. Yeah, so I think to answer your question about how was the 2 years on the road, today reminded me of why I loved it so much. We had lots of moments. I mean, like probably at least several a week where we would be in places that there was not good cell phone service, or we just played games together in the RV if the weather was bad.
Well, and they got exposed to so many different cultures and people and lifestyles. And if you don't do that, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, you would be fascinated to listen to my children talk. We were at dinner the other night. Again, the 6 of us, the baby was being babysat. We were in Vegas. We flew into Vegas from Oklahoma, stayed there 2 days. The one night we went to a really nice dinner and then went into a Cirque du Soleil show before we came down
Which
here
one
to
did you
St.
go
George.
to?
We went to Ka.
Okay.
Yeah, really, really good. I mean, I'm just sitting there thinking about what has had to go in to even put this whole thing on. Okay, I mean, from
the stage is
from the
crazy.
stage to the practicing to just the concepts and the ideas to the entire theater, and I'm thinking, I literally couldn't tell you how any of this works.
Yeah.
And yet I get to benefit
Yeah.
from the result of all of these humans that like this stuff so much, they're willing to do blood, sweat, tears, effort, time, money, resources.
Actually, one of the actors or performers died while doing the show because it's so crazy with the stage.
Smokes.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
Wow. So we're at dinner, and this is just kind of who I am. So I asked my children to put their phones away, and I said, look, indulge me. This is your price for getting to go on all these great trips and being so fortunate to be in our family. And I said, each person is going to go around the table. Each person has to ask a question, and then all 6 of us have to answer.
I love that.
Okay. And you could see just a hair bit of resistance, like with the children. Like, oh man, you're my dad, But not 2 minutes into it, they've forgotten the silliness of it, and they're totally into it.
Yeah.
Okay. And every single one of my 3 older children, in one facet or another, based on the question, talked about how they're going to go see the world as they get older.
That's awesome.
And why, and how they, like, my 11-year-old son will come home from public school, and he doesn't mean to, but he'll be like, Dad, My friends say they've never even been to another state other than Oklahoma, and they're telling me that I'm lying. They say there's no way I could have been to all 50 states.
I was going to ask if your kids went back to school, because that would probably be challenging to get all the exposure that they did and then go back into our old archaic system.
Yeah, my 11-year-old actually is now wanting to homeschool again.
I bet.
He's just not enjoying it. You know, I understand. They think they're missing out on friends or sports or whatever, but there's also components where you can still have that and not necessarily have to do the whole thing.
Yeah.
My daughter, she's like an old soul. She doesn't even have a phone yet, and she's 13. Because we ask all of our children, I think I'm going to add yours to the list, we ask all of our children to read 12 books before they can have a phone.
Oh, I love that.
Okay, of our choosing. And my oldest son, and you couldn't get a phone until you were 12, okay? So my oldest son, he did it. He wrote a summary on all the books, and he got his phone at 12. My daughter, she thought she wanted kind of a phone at 12, but she didn't really want to read the books. Okay. So she read one or two, and then she was like, nah, I don't really need a phone. Okay, no problem, right? And then, of course, my 11-year-old, he negotiated that if he did it early, could he go ahead and get the phone?
Yeah.
So he got a phone at 11 after reading the 12 books and writing the summary. And I thought maybe that might change something for my daughter. No, she could care less.
That's really interesting, because I thought my kids are too young to do this yet, but I told my wife when we're having our kids, I said, here's the deal. When our kids do something wrong, like where they would traditionally be punished, I said, here's what the punishment's going to be. Depending on what it is that they did, I'm going to prescribe them a book that's going to teach them why they shouldn't have done that thing that they did, or what's a lesson they could derive from the situation they found themselves in.
I love it.
And ultimately, their punishment is up to them.
Yeah.
So if it takes them a month to read the book, they're grounded for a month.
Right.
If it takes 4 days to read the book, they're grounded for 4 days. I don't really care, because now they're going to understand the value of hard work. They're gonna take a lesson from someone else way better than they'll take it from me. Because if I gave them the same message from the book, I imagine they'll take it better from someone else, because it's not their dad. And then they're gonna have to write a summary, and then they're gonna get all of this knowledge and understand, like, wow, based on how much effort I'm willing to put in, I get the reward of less of a punishment.
Yeah,
So
I think at the end of the day, the best thing I feel like I've learned about parenting is I communicate a lot with my children, and so does my wife, Caroline. And what I want them to know more than anything in the whole world is they owe me nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. And that there is never going to be another human on this planet, unless I'm not here or Caroline's not here, that is going to be more willing to do anything within our power to support anything they're interested in. I don't care if you want to get married, don't want to get married. I don't care if you want to be a lesbian or heterosexual. I don't care if you want to be an entrepreneur or an employee. I don't care if you want to live in Bali or Oklahoma. I don't care if you want to live in an RV or in a mansion. I don't care if you want to drive a Lamborghini or a Volkswagen. Like, I am no longer attached to anything that is a preference or an interest or something that's really about me.
Yeah.
They are not buckets for me to dump into.
Isn't that great? Because you're stopping that. Trauma is the wrong word, but that's the best word I can think of. Like, because you had your trauma.
Correct.
Right. And had you not had that revelation, you most likely would have passed it on to your children.
Oh, I was, for sure.
And now you get to stop that buck, right? And so then they now get to live like a truly authentic life for themselves. Not many kids probably get that, because even if the parents aren't purposely doing it, they're just accidentally, subconsciously showing them and acting out behaviors that then they just, of course, they aspire to be like their parents, so they're just going to follow suit.
And that doesn't mean they're being raised in a perfect environment. That doesn't mean they're not facing a lot of the same things other people are. I mean, my oldest son went through a really tough time about a year ago. I mean, it was scary. And he was hanging around with the wrong people.
Yeah, that's
and
scary.
Getting into some, trouble and doing some other things. And we had to really put to practice what we believed was our parenting philosophy. And we had to say, we don't really know how this is going to turn out, but we cannot control him or stop him. And the best thing we can do is remind him that, yes, we do have some boundaries, and you have younger siblings, and there are certain things you cannot engage in while being at home.
Yeah.
But outside of that, if you want to live that life, you are free to live that life. That wouldn't be what we would choose.
Yeah.
But we can't make those decisions for you. And no matter what comes of it, you will always be our son. We will always accept and love you. We might have tough things to work through. There may be some real circumstances we got to deal with. And then my wife and I sometimes would cry ourselves to sleep at night. And our hope, prayer, whatever you want to call it, was, man, it would just be really amazing for our humanness if by the time he kind of realized that wasn't the life he wanted to live, that he wouldn't make such a catastrophic decision, that the consequence wouldn't be so severe.
Irreversible.
Not that you can't still make it recover, but there are just certain things that really make your life extra challenging.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And we're very grateful that he did have some tough consequences, but nothing earth-shattering, if you will.
Nothing that changed the trajectory of his life.
And so today, because he was given, in a sense, the freedom to fail forward, to get into some trouble, to see what real life was like, it was that contrast that was necessary. And I'll never forget it. It was like 8 months ago. And he came into our room one night, and he's not super emotional. Like, that's not his personality. He's a lot more just kind of stable and stoic, and
that's probably a little bit of like being the oldest child, where you were going through so much strife because he probably had to be strong for his siblings, you know?
And he broke down in tears and was able to articulate and express how thankful he was that we were his mom and dad.
Wow. How old is he right now?
He's 17. He'll be 18 in October.
That's pretty amazing.
He graduated high school early. After a tough circumstance kind of put him in a tough position, and he just responded and kind of rose above. We brought in he was ready and open to wanting to change, and so we brought in a family life coach, and she actually worked with our two other older, children. Arrow's obviously too little, and then worked with him, and then we were there in presence, and it worked. I mean,
That's awesome.
he really responded. And today, he's already investing his money. He's an entrepreneur. I mean, he's probably got $5,000 to $10,000 in his bank account. He's a great older sibling. He's still a 17-year-old kid. He wrecked my car the other day. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to sit here. I don't want people. I think sometimes people misconstrue what I'm trying.
I don't think you have to try and diminish all the great things you said. I think sometimes we feel like when we say so many good things that we have to, for certain listeners, be like, now, shit's still bad sometimes.
Right.
But you don't have to do that, because everything that you said can still be true, and we all understand he's a 17-year-old boy, but it doesn't take away from all that success. So, okay, so then I think that covered most of the questions I have, but now I got to ask you the ones I ask everyone. I'm going to ask you, the first one is, what was the most influential book you read during your journey? What's the one that stuck with you the most?
The 4 Agreements.
Oh, that's such a good book. Everyone should read that book.
I read it every year.
Yeah.
I think it's like 8 years in a row
That's
now.
definitely a book you can reread. I think if I was to give a short list of a must read for anyone, no matter what their circumstance is,
don't you agree? You could read that book and no other book, but say, I'm going to embed this so deep that I'm going to embody and master it. And that's the one thing I'm going to focus on my entire human existence.
Yes.
You'd be a badass human.
Yeah. The 4 Agreements is, that's so cool. You said that. Okay. So then the next question for you is, what's been your biggest win in your life?
That my wife, Caroline, and I are absolutely, madly, deeply in love at 27 and a half years. Like, there's a real fire.
And even to say that over beating cancer twice just shows how powerful and important that is.
I mean, she is, and she really is a beautiful woman. She's from Puerto Rico. The interesting thing is her name, Caroline, means beautiful woman.
Oh, wow.
But when I think about her loyalty, when I think about her companionship, when I think about the support of everything I've put her through on my evolution and my journey to becoming the real authentic me, from, and we didn't have time to get into it today, but, I committed infidelity on her in the 4th year of marriage. I had a 10-year gambling addiction from the 3rd to the 13th year. I put her through bankruptcy. We've moved houses or apartments over 20 times in our married life. She had a miscarriage. Then I got cancer twice. Like,
I can't believe we're at an hour and 24 minutes and you just dropped like 5 bombs.
I was hoping maybe you'd invite me back one day.
Yeah, no, well, I'm going to have to now. I mean, that is.
I didn't do that on purpose, by the way. Okay.
I know you didn't.
I just want people to know.
No, that's really cool. I think that's amazing. I think it's important for people to see in today's world too, that you can have that magical connection with someone, but that magical connection is not easy. You just listed off 10 different things that so many different people could have ended it at any one of those roadblocks.
Yeah, because if you want to talk about it very practically, you know what I realized as a guy and a male, and the fact that, sex is obviously just this huge thing that's built into us.
Yeah.
When you get to have sex with someone who actually really wants you, that's different.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, that one lands different. Like, I'm a guy. Of course, I see a hot woman or this, that, and whatever, right? But there's no desire anymore because I know what real amazing intimacy actually is like. And you don't get there overnight.
Yeah, it takes 27 years.
It did for us.
So, okay, the next question is, and this one's a little bit more challenging, and I didn't get to define this for you earlier, and you're new to the book, but when I talk about wins and losses, it's really just how you define it, right? Not
Fair
society's
enough.
definition, but what would be your biggest loss that you faced so far in your life?
During my cancer journey, an interesting thing kind of happened, and I won't go into all the details, and some of it's private and stored or whatever, but after I'd kind of gotten better, and after the fundraising component, something happened within our family or whatever, and we were kind of given access to a decent amount of money. And we took a pretty large portion of that, and we invested it, ironically, with someone that had been a part of my alternative cancer journey that we had met, that we thought we could trust, and was very knowledgeable in that aspect. And they completely 100% scammed us out of $260,000.
Wow. It's devastating.
And it took me over a year while on the...
Did that happen prior to you having the revelation about your financially racist family?
Yes.
Of course it did.
Yes, it did. Yes.
Because it wouldn't have happened after.
Yeah. And how do you make peace with that?
Yeah.
How do you let it go?
Yeah, that's tough.
How do you still feel appreciation? Because actually, interesting enough, that human was the one that actually solved the fluid problem. So I'd had that fluid problem for 7 months.
Wow.
That human offered us something that no one else had. And 30 days after I started seeing that person, I got over the fluid problem. And then like a year later, they took us for $260,000.
I guess in perspective, if before you had the fluid problem, if they said someone can fix it for $260,000 and you get to live, you'd be okay with that.
I hadn't quite put the words together like you just did, so thank you. That's beautiful. I feel like I've kind of done that, but I love how you just said that, right? You just make peace with it all.
Yeah. Okay, so then last question, I think this is the most important one because we talked about how we are in control of our lives, and I think that the definition of success gets a lot of people screwed up. So how do you define success?
I'm not a successful dad, but I'm an engaged dad. I'm not a successful husband, but I'm willing to show up every day as a husband. I'm not a successful business person. I'm an engaged business person. I'm not a successful friend, but I'll show up and I'll roll my sleeves up and I'll get in the trenches and I'll do the dirty work and I'll say, you know what? I didn't show up well. I shouldn't have said that. I own it. I'm wrong. I was out of place, and I value our relationship more. And there is no greater measurement that I've discovered yet. I could.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like what we said earlier, just starting. You're just showing up.
Yeah.
So many people don't show up. You know, or what you said that I really love is you take accountability for when you were wrong or when you were right. Because you can't just only take it when you're wrong. You need to also give yourself credit when you've done something well. But so many people, when something happens, they deflect. And because of that, they never grow. Because they've never had an opportunity where they were able to have introspection to say, oh, I could have been better here had I done this. If they just think it's always someone else's fault, they will continually be stagnant and never grow.
And it's an ongoing practice. 2 days ago, we were in Vegas. I guess I kind of was cutting off a person. My wife kind of hollered at me. I kind of snapped back at her. There was some weird energy for a while during the show.
Yeah.
Where I'm in the show I didn't feel like saying just I'm sorry was really going to be sufficient. So I just trusted that something would come into my awareness that after the show, I could basically show her that like, let's put that to rest and I take full ownership. And so what came to me is I just got a moment where I could just kind of get close to her and look her in the eyes. And I just looked at her and said, thanks for always looking out for me.
Oh, I love that.
And that was enough.
Yeah.
You could just feel
energy back to normal.
It just dropped. We're back. We're good.
That's funny.
Nothing else needed to be said.
Being with my wife for 17 years, we'll have those things too, where it's like, oh, okay, so you're pissed right now then. That's
yeah.
right.
And then this morning, I raised my voice at my 11-year-old over a misunderstanding on something I didn't realize my wife had communicated to him. And I didn't really like how I showed up. So a couple minutes later, I went and again, very intentional. And I did it in front of everybody else because I want everybody to see. Like I own
I
being
love that
an ass.
vulnerability and sharing that. That's really
And
important.
I looked at him and I said, hey, Arthur. And I made sure he's looking at me and we got eye contact. And I said, listen, I raised my voice. I was out of line. That was not the way I wanted to handle that. I can't go back and change it. Will you forgive me? I love you and I am sorry that I did that, but I am human. Yes, Dad.
And then you guys went and had an epic journey at Sheep's Ridge.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I love that. Okay, well, anything you want to leave the audience with? They can follow you on Instagram at the Ryan
Luelf.
So close.
I know it's hard, right?
Ryan Luelf, and that's spelled Luelf if you're
Looks
listening.
like Luelf. Yeah.
Luelf, yep. And then you also have a podcast, 5 episodes out, a podcast for humans.
Yes.
Anywhere podcasts are found.
Yeah,
iTunes,
Podbeam and Apple Podcasts right now, and we're waiting for Spotify to approve or whatever. My friend Jake Stringer and I do it together. And we're just, I told him, I said, hey, look, I did a podcast before. And I'm like, I'm really great on the mic. And then after that, I'm not very good. And he goes, oh, I can do all of that. And I said, well, then we're going to make a great partnership.
That's great. Any other information you want to leave the audience with or how they can connect with you?
You can also go to ryanluelf.com if you want to read my wife's blog that she kept all through my entire cancer journey.
That's cool.
Okay, in grave detail. And I'm probably most active on Facebook, actually, even more than Instagram. Okay. Same thing, the Ryan Luelf. I mean, I have a profile. It's just a regular, like the one where you get maxed out at 5,000 friends or whatever. And if you're there, just know that the main thing I talk about now is pickleball and passive income because we play a lot. And
you earn a lot.
And we earn a lot, thankfully, without having to trade very much time for it because I'm never going to get these years back. And these feel like very important times in my children's life.
Absolutely. What a blessing to be able to spend so much time with them.
It is a blessing, man. I mean, I could have easily not been here. So
yeah.
Definitely just... like I said, I mean, overwhelmed with gratitude, and it spills into almost my daily life. I can't hardly make it 24 hours without having a moment of sensation where I'm like, oh man, I get to still be here. I get to be a human.
Yeah. And the real takeaway there is how do we let people experience that same life without having to have a near-death experience, right? Because everyone has the opportunity to have that same emotion, but we just got to change the way we think and we perceive things and we feel about things so everyone can experience life the way that you are.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hey, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. It was a great episode. I was a blast.
I appreciate you having me on, especially since it was a blind date.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think it went really
you had to trust your friends.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it went really well. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm excited to read your book too, by the way.
I
Seriously.
appreciate that. Yeah, I really do.
Thanks, man.